Okay, today is the 16th of February, 2021. Zoning Board of Appeals is here to hear an appeal made by Mr. Chanonet. How do you pronounce your name? Dennis Chanonet. Is that person here?
Yeah, I'm Gordon Smith.
Oh, Gordon. Gordon Smith. Okay.
Yeah, I'm represent it's Mr. Chandonnet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and we have 4 members of the Zoning Board of Appeals on hand. Dennis, Brandy. Just make sure we have Roland. Make sure you have at least 4. And we do. Okay. All right, so there was an application that was submitted by the Pearsons. Are the Pearsons here? Pat?
Yes.
Okay.
I am here.
Right. Okay, so let's we'll start out by starting the meeting officially. I need a motion to start the meeting.
I'll make a motion. We start the meeting.
I need somebody to second it.
Second.
Okay. All right, then we can start the meeting officially. What I'm going to ask everybody to do, because we're on Zoom, is that I need both sides to, we'll take both sides one at a time. Gordon, you'll be going first. We're going to listen to what you have to say. No one's going to interrupt you. And at the conclusion of your statement, then our board can ask questions. Mrs. Pearson can ask a question. And once that's done, then I'm going to go back and let Mrs. Pearson state her reply. Same thing, we're just going to let her talk, and then one at a time, the members will ask questions. Both of you guys can also ask each other questions as well. So it's not just for the board, but it's also for the applicant and the person who's appealing, okay? So we're just going to keep this slow and steady and no interruptions. Make sense? You know what? All I'm basically want to know is the facts of everything. I'm not really concerned about hearsay or people's opinions of the planning board or the ex-CEO here. And it doesn't really matter to us. What we want is just the facts. Okay?
Absolutely.
All right. With that being said, Mr. Smith, you can go right ahead.
Okay. Is it okay with the board if I share my screen?
Sure.
I have a little presentation just to make it a little easier to look at.
Yep.
This is a pretty straightforward appeal. Let me see if I can get my screen up here. It's really about whether or not the septic system that is part of the building permit that the CEO issued complies with the Acton zoning ordinance setbacks. So this is a sort of excerpt from Ms. Pearson's submission showing that her proposed septic system is within the town's shoreline zone, meaning within 250 feet of the lake. And you can see she's drawn, I think this is this line, this is the 250-foot line, and here's the proposed septic field, and I'm sorry, and the lake is up here. So that's the 250-foot line. And the purposes of the Acton Shoreline District are obviously primarily to protect the shoreland resources, and to control water pollution and to control the use and development of undeveloped shoreland areas. to provide maximum protection to the land and water resources. So specifically, in the shoreline zone, and this is from an excerpt from the Acton zoning ordinance, you have the structure requirements. And it says all structures shall meet the following minimum requirements: setback from the normal high water line or upland edge of 75 feet. And in this case, 100 feet from a gray pond, that would be from the lake. It's further than 100 feet from the lake. But 75 feet from river, stream, wetland, or tributary stream. And tributary stream is the key term there. You also have setbacks from front property lines and side property lines, and those are also implicated. So in order for the setback requirement to apply, the septic system has to be a structure. And so the Acton Shoreline Zoning Ordinance has this definition of structure. It's a very broad definition: anything built for the sport, shelter, enclosure of persons, animals, goods, or property, together with anything constructed or erected with a fixed location on or in the ground, exclusive of this other stuff. And this is a definition that shows up in a lot of ordinances. Particularly, it's taken from the state model shoreline zoning ordinance. And we have the main courts have looked at this definition and determined that it encompasses a septic system. So we have this case that I'll just walk through quickly, Bernier versus the town of Litchfield from 2010, where this exact question was asked. The issue is whether the definition of a structure in section 17 of this, in the town of Litchfield's ordinance, includes septic systems. And so this ordinance defines a structure as anything. It's the verbatim word for word definition as the Acton zoning ordinance: anything built for support, shelter, enclosure of persons, anything constructed with a fixed location of the ground, etc. So they're looking at the same ordinance language to determine whether it captures a septic system. And the court found that under plain definition of the word support, septic system would reasonably understood to provide support for a person's occupancy. This is the court's reasoning. They also said a septic system is a constructed item in a fixed location on the property intended to support residential activity. So in finding that the septic system was a structure, the court said this interpretation is harmonious with the purposes of the shoreline zoning ordinance. Now, I would stop here. Most or many towns have separate zoning ordinances and shoreline zoning ordinances. In Acton, it's all part of one ordinance. The zoning ordinance includes the shoreline zoning requirements. So here, this case is talking about specifically about an independent shoreline zoning ordinance, SCO, but it applies to the shoreline zoning provisions that are contained in the Acton zoning ordinance. So the shoreline zoning ordinance is intended to protect shoreline areas and inhabitants from environmentally detrimental effects of development. The most significant consequence of an object being classified as a structure is that it is subject to significant setback requirements. And in accordance with the ordinance's goals, reading structures to include septic systems reasonably construes the ordinance to achieve its intended purpose in maintaining healthful conditions. So we have the guidance from the courts that the language of the Acton ordinance should be read to include structures, septic systems as structures. Then the question is, so we go back to the requirement, the setback of structures from the normal high water line of a tributary stream. And we know that there's a water course on the Pearsons property. I don't know if it's depicted on, here it is right here, I think. There's a water course on the Pearsons property. And the question is, does it constitute a tributary stream such that the setback requirement is implicated? So the definition, this is from the Acton zoning ordinance. A channel between defined banks, characterized by lack of vegetation, connected hydrologically to other water bodies. There's also this exclusion. This term does not include rills or gullies forming because of accelerated erosion in disturbed soils where the natural vegetation cover has been removed by human activity. That exception doesn't apply here because of this has been removed by human activity part, where that's not the case here. Is, we're not looking at an erosional gully that was formed because the area had been stripped. This area is in its sort of natural state, as I understand it. And then this part of the definition where it says definition does not include the term stream as defined elsewhere in the ordinance, and only applies to the portion of tributary stream located in the shoreline zone. So the Acton Shoreline, the Acton zoning ordinance has a definition for stream. That's a larger body of water than a tributary stream. A stream is a water course that's visible on a certain scale, GIS topo map. This water course is not visible on that scale map, but it does fall within the category of a tributary stream. And we know that for a couple of reasons. One, when this is an excerpt of the CEO permit issued to Ms. Pearson, on the very first page, it says must maintain a 75-foot setback to tributary stream located within the shoreline zone at 155 Langley Shores Drive, which is the Pearson property. So the code enforcement officer identified that water course as a tributary stream. We also have the DEP site specialist who went out there, Lucian Langlois, and he said an intermittent stream is identified on the lot. This stream meets the criteria described in the Natural Resources Protection Act. So that's a different, so it says it constitutes a stream under NRPA, Natural Resources Protection Act. That's not the same exact definition as the Acton zoning ordinance definition of tributary stream, but it's analogous and it's very similar. In order for something to be a stream under NRPA, if the channel bed is primarily, it is a stream if the channel bed is primarily composed of mineral materials such as sand and gravel, parent material or bedrock that has been deposited or scoured by water, and the channel contains aquatic vegetation that is essentially devoid of upland vegetation. Now we go back and compare that to the Acton definition, characterized by the lack of terrestrial vegetation and the presence of a bed devoid of topsoil containing deposits or exposed soil, parent material, or bedrock. So basically the same criteria. The DEP evaluator went out there and found that this was in fact a stream under those criteria that are more or less the same as the Acton zoning ordinance criteria. So what we have is a structure, and it's within 75, and so therefore it needs to be 75 feet from a tributary stream, and the water course on the Pearson property is a tributary stream. The plans for the Pearson septic system shows that it's at the closest point within the shoreline zone is 29 feet from the tributary stream. And so I'm just going to sort of stop my share here. It's 29 feet, and it's 8 feet from the sideline, where the common boundary between Ms. Pearson's property and Mr. Chandonier's property. That's a 10-foot setback there. So that side setback is not met. And there's also a 50-foot setback to the the center line of the road. And I'm not from the front portion of the Pearson property. I don't know what the measurements are there, but that may or may not be implicated. So that's the basic issue. There's a second issue, which is that the Acton zoning ordinance says that setback variances for first time systems will not be granted. And I can show you, let me show you this part of the ordinance. So this is in section 517 of the Acton zoning ordinance. It relates to septic systems, subsurface wastewater systems, and it says that the minimum setback distance for a new subsurface disposal system may not be reduced by variance. So that applies not only at the town level, but also at the state level, where the town and the state sort of have overlapping jurisdiction, where Ms. Pearson obtained a variance from the Department of Health and Human Services for reducing their setback from 50 feet to 29 feet, but in doing so, relied on the code enforcement officer's representation that the system was consistent with Acton ordinances. And so where the Acton ordinance says you can't reduce setback distances by variance, the state cannot issue a variance because it would be inconsistent with the Acton ordinance. So those are the two issues where the code enforcement officer approval has run afoul of the ordinance. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Gordon. Does anybody in the ZBA committee have questions for Mr. Smith? Okay, the Acton CEO, do you have anything else to state or questions at all about Mr. Gordon's statement?
Just for clarity.
No, not at this time.
Sorry, Dan. Just for clarity, Mr. Lankowski is serving in that seat as well, so.
Mr. Who?
Lankowski?
Dan, Joe Lankowski. I'm the land use attorney for the town of Acton.
Okay, Joe, do you have anything to add or questions or comments?
Well, I do have one question and a couple of comments. I have
Okay.
a question for Attorney Smith. The case that you cited, Gordon, the case that you cited for the proposition that the septic system is a structure. Do you know? I can't tell from just what's in your materials, and I just saw it today, so I didn't get a chance to look at the case. But in that case, had the code enforcement officer determined that it was a structure?
Actually, no. The planning board in that case determined that it was not a structure, and the board, I'm sorry, the court reversed the planning board.
Okay, so that was a direct appeal from planning board to Superior Court?
Yes, I believe it was.
Okay. All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, is this a point in time that you want me to make any comments I might have, or are you going to go to the applicant first?
No, I'd like for you to make comments at this point. Sure.
Okay.
Please.
My situation here is a little different from what we would normally have, since as I think most everybody knows, we're transitioning from the code enforcement officer whose decision's under appeal here to a new code enforcement officer who was not involved in this particular case. So I've been asked by the town to sort of state the what we presume to be the position of the code enforcement officer who issued these permits. And so basically, I am taking exception to a couple of critical points that Gordon is making. First of all, clearly, as Gordon points out, the building permit that was issued by Ken Paul said required that all structures be 75 foot back from the tributary stream. So clearly, when Ken issued his permit, he did not consider the septic system to be a structure as defined by the ordinance. And I understand that Gordon has submitted a Superior Court case that finds the contrary, but I would suggest to the board that that's a perfectly reasonable interpretation. We have specific setback requirements for septic systems. They're treated differently from other structures. I personally do not read that definition as encompassing a concrete block structure or whatever the composition might be that's placed underground as a septic system. I don't think that's for storage of people or animals or support of people or animals or anything else that falls within that definition of structure. I agree that our definition of structure is broad. I don't think it's that broad. I think the other readings that I would take exception to is Gordon's reading of 5.17C. The last sentence, which the minimum setback distance for a new subsurface disposal system may not be reduced by variance. Gordon is interpreting that as a prohibition in the Acton zoning ordinance to the state decreasing the required setback by variance. I don't believe that was the intent of that sentence. I think that sentence simply acknowledges the fact that the town of Acton has no authority to grant a variance from the wastewater disposal, the setbacks established by the wastewater disposal rules. Only the state can do that, acting through DHHS, which is why we have this whole process for submitting these applications for variances to the Department of Health and Human Services. So I disagree with the idea that submitting that variance request to the Department of Human Services was contrary to the Acton zoning ordinance. I think that's a misreading of that sentence. I think that the only body who can grant a variance is the Department of Health and Human Services, which is why we follow the procedure that we follow, and which is why that's where this appeal really should be. Because that's really the crux of this appeal, is that the appellant is saying that setback should not have been reduced. Well, the setback was reduced because the representative of the Department of Health and Human Services made a determination in this case that it was appropriate to do so. That's where this appeal should be and not here. Thank you. All I have.
Okay, does any of the board members have follow-up questions for Joe? Okay, Mr. Smith? Give me rebuttal.
I guess I would just say these are two separate issues. The question of does the Acton zoning ordinance allow variances on setbacks for first-time systems? That's one question. And the other question is, does the system meet the shoreline zoning setback requirements for structures in the shoreline zone? That's two totally separate questions. I guess I would also maybe just suggest to the board that it's the board's duty and authority to answer these questions of, whether the septic system constitutes a structure under the Acton zoning ordinance. And, you know, we have case law to the effect that it does. I maybe would count. I mean, I guess I'm not sure the role of the town attorney is to be drawing legal conclusions for the board. I mean, that's the board's job, is to make that interpretation of the ordinance. And I think the town attorney can counsel the board on what the existing law is, but in terms of the ultimate conclusion, namely, you know, does the septic system constitute an ordinance under constitute a structure under the Acton ordinance and main case law guidance? That's for the board to decide.
Okay, all right, Mr. Smith, your point's taken. Any questions at all from the board members?
I only got one. When the permit was issued by the state, right? Do we have the authority to kind of go against what the state has already said? That's kind of my only issue.
Yeah, these are two totally independent decisions. The building permit issued by the code enforcement officer in Acton, that's an approval, and that's what's before the board right now. The state decision relating solely to the septic system's compliance with the state's septic system rules, that's a completely separate approval. And that does not prohibit this board from making determinations under the Acton zoning ordinance. And Mr. Chandonnet has appealed that state issued variance as well. So that appeal is pending. But it's for the board to determine the requirements under the Acton zoning ordinance, and that has nothing to do with the state.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Smith. Mrs. Pearson.
Yes.
Okay, we'd like to hear your side.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I have a PowerPoint presentation that I'd like to put on and share, if that's okay with you. It'll take
Sure.
about 20 minutes or so, and if I need to stop because someone has a question, I'd be happy to. Maybe you could just put your finger up or something, and I'll do that. So just give me a minute. I'll try to hit the right buttons. And no. Hello, everyone. My name is Pat Pearson, the owner of the lot at 155 Langley Shore Drive. The following slide presentation is my interpretation of my attempt to help clarify some key points to address for my neighbors and hopefully create a better understanding of the validity of the building permit that has been issued. Any questions pertaining to this appeal are best addressed by the professionals present for this public hearing, including the CEO, lawyer, and members of the Acton Zoning Board of Appeals. My primary defense and rebuttal for this appeal is the permit in question is in complete compliance with both the state rules and local ordinances interpreted by the Acton CEO, who had 24 years experience on the job. He believes the permit meets and exceeds the state and local requirements. The professional people who issue permits are knowledgeable, qualified, and certified to do so. This slide is a summary of the sequence of applications and site reviews completed leading up to the building permit. I put the bottom statement in for those concerned about sedimentation. The timeline slide documents there were many checks and balances throughout the long process. This wasn't done overnight. It began with a purchase and sale on the property, September 13th, 2020. Boundaries were established by a professional land surveyor both on September 17th and the 26th. After that, we contacted the DEP, filed an application for a permit by rule in the Shoreline Zone. We met for a site review on October 28th, and the permit was issued. Then there was a soils test, a septic design on November 16th. The pre-treatment maintenance agreement was filed on December 22nd, and the building permit and Shoreline Zone tree removal permit were issued December 30th. Incidentally, I just wanted to mention I obtained the Shoreline Zone certification in January 2021 to comply with the rules of the DEP using best management practices when working in the Shoreline Zone to ensure best practices for erosion control. Here's some background information about the lot and the subdivision created in 1941. Like everyone else who has a camp in this subdivision, it is a lot of record. Number 1.4.7. This law is important for providing protection of the lot when no reasonable alternative exists under today's standard for building. This is a slide showing the location of the lot within the subdivision. Please note the location of the major water body, Grady's Lake, across Langley Shore Drive at the top. In addition to the camp location, minor watercourse, and septic system, this map of the site plan denotes the location of the line separating approximately 1/3 Shoreline Zone to the north and the remainder in Rural District to the south. It's also noted there are other watercourse runoffs running along the entire slope, encompassing all the camp roads in the area. These too run along the lot lines as designed in the original subdivision. In this lot, it bisects across because it skirts around a high knoll. These are definitions from the Acton zoning ordinance. A list of definitions the watercourse did not meet include great pond, lagoon, stream, water body, wetland. Why? Because they didn't involve major water. And noting the difference between major watercourse and minor watercourse is significant to interpretation of the rules. So the closest thing that it could meet in the Acton book is a tributary stream. On page 33 is defined as a channel between defined banks, does not include the term stream as defined, and only applies to that portion located within the shoreline zone of the receiving water body or wetland. It's DEP regulated due to the 250 feet from the lake. It does not meet the criteria to be designated on a town map. Setbacks for building a structure located in the rural district are all in compliance. Number 4.10.2 with the Acton ordinances that are regulated by the CEO without the need of a variance per number 1.4.7, which refers to non-conforming vacant lots. State and local authorities exist for natural resource protection and conservation. Let's just think about this. If the conditions did not meet the criteria according to the rules, it never would have been considered in the first place. A wastewater treatment location is expertly designed to fit the topography and soils of the site. This is a slide illustrating a synopsis of the criteria for the conditions met. The details of the conditions are addressed in the following slides, but this is just a synopsis. So we'll start with non-conforming lot of record. It was in existence since 1941. No reasonable alternative. The law provides 1.4.7.1. Those are local. Setbacks for the camp meets all the provisions. 4.3.3, that's local. Camp locations in the rural zone. It's not in shoreline zone, so that's local again. DEP permit by rule. Shoreline Zone reduction setback to 25 feet from a minor watercourse. That's within the state's authority. Minimal impact, I'm going to remove 3 trees and replant native species to preserve the environment for best management practices. The septic system design and soils test 30 inches far exceeds the 12-inch required minimum depth. There's additional engineering to overcome the limitations, increase separation distance from limiting factor, etc., and a maintenance agreement in the deed covenant at the York County Registry of Deeds. This is a minor watercourse, does not meet the definition of a stream flowing out of a major water body. Inside Shoreline Zone, remember, is regulated by DEP. Outside Shoreline Zone is regulated by Acton. These photos were taken in January 2021 at the lower end of the lot. They're 2 views of the same location. The cars at the corner and the camp location proposed is uphill to the right. The DEP determination was an intermittent stream, a minor watercourse, because it doesn't flow out of a major water body. This section of the lot is in Shoreline Zone, and you can see the size of it. The system elevation is high on a knoll. In the event of a major rainfall, note the wastewater treatment system site's highly elevated on the knoll, distanced, subsurfaced, and located well beyond the reach of the drainage outlet to the culvert. Additionally, it's 190 feet from the lake. Here's a picture of the culvert on the right, and maybe it needs improvement. It's probable that insufficient erosion control during the construction located uphill contributed to the soil washing into the lake, as mentioned in a letter to the state by the second aggrieved party. Sherry Culver and Jeffrey Del Sesto's camp is located further downhill at the lake shoreline. The photo on the left shows a close-up of the system location. It's a pretty flat area. The photo on the right will show you the knoll. The location of the system is up in the upper left-hand corner above the sign to the left. This is not going to compromise the water quality of Grady's Lake. The water coming out of the tank is almost potable, as I'll show you in the next slide. The singular green is a 3-tank chambers design, which includes first a pre-treatment chamber, second an aeration chamber for aerobic treatment. The third is a clarification chamber of almost potable water coming out of the tank, exiting to a fourth part of the system, which is a concrete chamber leach field for anaerobic in-ground filtration of the wastewater. Typical systems just have a tank collecting the solid and the liquid waste. It's directly exiting to a second form of treatment to the leach field for anaerobic processing. This is a photo taken outside of Shoreline Zone, which is 2/3 of the property. Note that the water was not running in late September. It's dry. This slide illustrates the governing authority as it applies to the lot concerning the tributary stream. Inside Shoreline Zone is regulated by the state. Outside Shoreline is regulated by town ordinance. It's in the rural district. Therefore, it does not meet the criteria to be included on the town maps of regulated watercourse. And the setbacks for the Shoreline Zone do not apply in the rural district. The map colors orange and yellow show the 2 zones with different governing authorities, and the diagonal lines show the lot location of the aggrieved parties. You'll notice that Dennis has 2-acre house lot 47. I'm in the middle, and then there is a 2-acre vacant lot with a 60-foot foundation that's capped. And then there's a 50-acre parcel that Dennis owns. Sherry Culver and Jeffrey Del Sesto are located closer to the lake as shown. The photo on the far left is an overview from Google, and it shows the amount of trees that are on the lot. Trees and vegetation are an important component of erosion control, and those who know me may call me a naturalist and a tree hugger. On the right, it shows a pseudo plan for replanting of native species and what the corner might look like where the sign is located. The site plan includes removing as few trees as possible. This is the first in a series of slides that address the specific statements and questions in the abutters letter by Dennis Chandonnet. It's possible the aggrieved parties' collective fears contributed to the misinterpretation of the intended content. The aggrieved party, Dennis, asked why the permit application went to the state. He believes the zoning board of appeals should have been consulted first to obtain the local variance. I'm citing 1471, may be built upon without a variance. All provisions of the ordinance met, all subsurface wastewater disposal rules are complied with. It's not within the CEO's authority because it's main state regulated by DHHS. Dennis believes there's a problem with the setbacks and the location of the disposal system. DEP granted a permit by rule. There are no conflicts with any provisions controlling the subsurface waste disposal, as is evidenced in the following items. First, an in-person DEP rep site review. Second, soils test and documentation by a licensed site evaluator recorded in the septic disposal design. And thirdly, state-approved permit by rule is on file with the state. Dennis asks if there's a conflict with the local ordinances. There can be no conflict with the local ordinances. 1471, non-conforming vacant lot, the last sentence. Variances related to setback or other requirements, not, the key word, involving lot size, lot width, or road and shore frontage shall be obtained by the action of the Acton Board of Appeals. Variances not involving lot size. This lot does involve lot size. Non-conforming lots do involve lot size, therefore meeting the criteria of the law as written. Page 69, 5.17C, Sanitary Provisions. The minimum setback distance for a new subsurface disposal system may not be reduced by a variance. In the context of how the ordinance is written, this applies to be constructed no less than 100 horizontal feet from the normal high water line of a perennial water body. The minimum setback distance for a new subsurface disposal system may not be reduced by variance. In this case, it exceeds the minimum by 90 feet. Grady's Lake is the perennial water body. It's 190 feet away. It's a misinterpretation. This law is taken out of context. If read in the context of the way the law is written, it only applies to a major water body. This slide is a quick review addressing the points brought forward in Dennis's original letter. 14.7, local variance not required on non-conforming lots. It's a state DEP issue. It's a permit by rule. It's a different process. No zoning board of appeals. Protocol for septic system application on file in the state of Maine. No letter. Site review with DEP, owners and CEO. Required signatures, the owner, the designer, the CEO, and the HHS. It's recorded Registry of Deeds. It's a covenant, it's a pre-treatment tank maintenance agreement. Disposal system location is determined by passing soils and a licensed septic system design. Singular pre-treatment tank design, no conflict with town ordinances. The setbacks are met. All setbacks are met without the need for a variance. The Shoreline Zone, it's DHHS regulated. Not within the town's Zoning Board of Appeals authority. 5.17C, they may not be reduced by variance. This again was out of context. It didn't apply. It was written for 100 feet from a great perennial water body, and we're exceeding it by 90 feet. Variance is not involving lot size. This lot does involve lot size. Most recently, Dennis's lawyer utilizes a deceptive strategy by referencing a court case about putting in a boat dock. Defining a wastewater treatment system as a structure is a tactic used as an attempt to misrepresent the intent of the ordinance. And simply stated, it's a desperate attempt to sway opinion. The CEO did not make a mistake in interpreting this ordinance. The intention as written on the building permit clearly applies to the setback for the camp being 75 feet from the tributary stream in Shoreline Zone. It's setback 115 plus feet. Building permits and septic systems are applied for separately, are governed by separate authorities, and reside in separate sections of the ordinance. In closing, I'd like to assert that there are no hidden agendas and nothing illegal was done here. My husband Nils and I are just looking for a cabin to enjoy retirement on the property we purchased. This presentation is a rebuttal to an administrative appeal. It's my hope that these slides have helped all interested parties conclude the rules were diligently followed. Maine state rules were followed, permits were issued, Act and zoning ordinances were complied with and correctly interpreted by the certified CEO who was employed in Acton for 24 years. I really think he knew what he was doing. We've been residents of this town for 33 years. You know, I can't really think about wanting to live anyplace else. The bumper sticker says it's God's country. Nils and I share the same desire to enjoy and protect the natural resource. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. Joe, do you have any follow-up questions or comments from Mrs. Pearson's statement?
Hold on, he's muted himself. Joe, you need to unmute. He's still muted.
He's
One
still
more time,
muted.
Joe.
Push a button, don't you? You're a lawyer, you should be able to know how to push buttons, right?
There we go.
No, I have nothing further based on the applicant's presentation.
Okay. Okay, the ZBA board members, any questions? What comments? Nothing? Okay, Mr. Smith, you're probably itching to say something.
What's that?
You're probably itching to say something.
I'd like to respond to a couple points. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So, I mean, I appreciate Ms. Pearson has gone through a lot of permitting process, a lengthy permitting process, and consulted a number of, the state and the town and DEP and DHHS. And that's obviously the right thing to do. But the question for the board is not, did she go through the process, but was the process, was the ordinance interpreted correctly? And the CEO's experience is not really relevant to that. It's the board's, duty to make that determination itself. In fact, the board conducts a de novo review, meaning it looks at this issue fresh. It doesn't defer to the code enforcement officer or the planning board or whoever, whichever entity it's reviewing. So there's, Ms. Pearson suggested that the town does not regulate the shoreline zone, meaning the area within 250 feet of Great East Lake. That's not true. All towns, municipalities regulate that shoreline zone. It's a state mandated program, but it's delegated to the towns, and every town in the state has a shoreline zoning ordinance or shoreline zoning provisions within a larger ordinance. So it's absolutely the state's or the town's responsibility and authority to regulate that area. And that's, the ordinance contains a shoreline district, and the shoreline district is the area within 250 feet of a lake in this case. And that shoreline district contains certain setback requirements, and that's what we're talking about. The questions about the rural district, those are not part of the appeal. We're not talking about the camp or the other aspects of the building permit. We're solely talking about the septic system that's located within the shoreline district. I think importantly, and one of the things, Ms. Pearson said was that she had gotten a permit from the DEP. I want to where's that? Share another. Not finding my PowerPoint. Hold on one second. I'm having trouble finding that.
Okay. We can move forward, and once you do, I'll let you back in, okay?
Hold on.
Okay.
There we go. Got it. Okay. So this is email correspondence from the DEP between members of the DEP. Lucian Langlois is the site evaluator the DEP site evaluator that went out to the site and was corresponding with the Pearsons. And these are all staff members at the DEP. Nick Lidisay is the head of the Bureau, the director of the Bureau of Land and Water. Colin Clark's a shoreline zoning guy. Jeffrey Kalinich is a shoreline zoning guy. This is a letter from Lucian to these guys saying, at the question that come up of whether the appropriate approvals had been obtained by the Pearsons, he says, I went back and forth over email a few times with the Pearsons in October and November. They emailed me some materials, but never officially submitted a permit by rule. They have not received any NERPA permits to date. This was dated January 28th, so it's a couple weeks old. I don't know if the Pearsons have obtained permits in the interim. And I think more importantly, Ms. Pearson talked about this provision in the Act and zoning ordinance about non-conforming lots and what that means. And there's no dispute that her lot is a non-conforming lot of record. But that does not by itself take her project out of the requirement that it meet zone setbacks. So what this says is that you can build upon a non-conforming lot of record without the need for a variance, provided that such lot can meet all provisions of this ordinance except lot size, road frontage, and shore frontage, and lot width in the Resource Protection and Shoreline Zoning District. So what that means is this says lots, it says that you do not have to meet, this lot does not have to meet the lot size, road frontage, and shore frontage, and lot width requirements in the ordinance. You don't need to get a variance for those. Then it says down here, variance relating to setback or other requirements not involving lot size, lot width, or road frontage and shore frontage shall be obtained by the action of the Acton Board of Appeals. So this non-conforming, this 1.4.7.1 that Ms. Pearson's pointing out, it does not exempt lots of record from meeting setback requirements. It exempts them from certain dimensional requirements, lot size, road frontage, shore frontage, lot width. Then the ordinance specifically says variances relating to setbacks or other requirements not involving those exempted requirements shall be obtained by the from the Acton Board of Appeals. So what you have is so that provision is intended to help people who own non-conforming lots of record build, but it doesn't just blanket exempt those lots of record from all ordinance requirements. It exempts them from certain specific requirements, and then the ordinance specifically says that if you need a setback variance, you have to go get that. I would also just note that I think in one of the slides that Ms. Pearson showed of it looks like the bottom of her property, or the part toward the lake. Excuse me. They're showing the water course, and that was taken in January of this year, and there's water flowing in it. So, this is not a time of year where, you would expect where an intermittent stream would necessarily have water in it. So I think that there's, that by itself is evidence that this would constitute a tributary stream under the Acton definition, the Acton ordinance definition. So the bottom line is, look, I understand that, there have been a lot of permitting processes that Ms. Pearson's gone through. The fact is, this is a very simple question to the board. Does the septic system constitute a structure? Main case law says it does, and under the Acton zoning ordinance. And does that structure have to comply with the setbacks in the shoreline zone? It does under the Acton zoning ordinance. And the design that Ms. Pearson submitted shows that the septic system is 29 feet from the tributary stream, where the ordinance requires it to be 75 feet from the tributary stream. That's the question before the board. The CEO's determination here, as I think was pointed out, was that the septic system doesn't constitute a structure under the ordinance. That's the error that we are appealing. That was an incorrect determination based on the language of the ordinance and what the main courts have told us.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any questions from the zoning board? Okay, Joe, do you have a question? A follow-up?
Yes, I have a follow-up, if I may, Mr. Chairman, just again on this issue of septic systems being structures. I'd just like to point out that we do have a definition in our ordinance of subsurface sewage disposal system. And if you read that definition, you'll see nothing in there that suggests that that this system is a structure. Also, I think it's important to note, and I may have touched on this briefly before, our ordinance contains setback requirements that specifically apply to these septic systems. And if the argument is accepted that the code enforcement officer was wrong in not applying the structure setback, that means now we have multiple, sometimes contradictory setback requirements for septic systems. I would suggest that both of those things should make the board hesitant to establish a rule that septic systems are structures. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Is there any abutters present who'd like to make a statement? Dwight?
Good afternoon, members of the board. I live at, my name is Dwight Sowerby. I have property at 200 Langley Shore Drive. My family has owned property at 188, 190, and 200 Langley Shore Drive, at least partially since 1946. I've owned the property at 200 Langley Shore Drive since I think around 2003. I have been flooded by this stream 3 times since 2003, including the infamous Patriots Day flood that many of you remember that completely washed out that road too. So this is not just a little trickle of water that you see in some of the pictures all of the time. Sometimes it's quite the raging watercourse. I guess I would just like to reiterate that in my view of reading that court case, I am an attorney, by the way, and my understanding of common sense, septic is clearly a structure. What else would it be? Common sense, as well as the court case, should tell you that it's something that was built, it was constructed, it is a structure. I also would like to reiterate that while there are 2 governing bodies, perhaps in this, the town still has authority over all parts of land within the town. The zoning ordinance specifically states that. And that I would also like to point out, again, I agree with, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last names of the other 2 attorneys, but the attorney for Jeff was absolutely correct in that just because you're a lot of record does not mean that you are exempt from all of the zoning issues such as setbacks, etc. It has to do with road size, with road frontage and lot size. You still have to comply, excuse me, with the other aspects of the zoning. I would urge the board to find that this was granted in error due to the fact that even though the state may have approved it, they approved it under the mistaken notion that it complied with the town of Acton zoning, which it clearly does not. I expect strongly that if this board rules that it can comply with the town of Acton, the state would retract its approval. Again, this may be a high-tech septic system, but it's not going to be worth much if it too gets flushed down the tributary. Those floods we were talking about since 2003 were major watershed issues, including creating a new beach right next to Jeff's property. I would urge the board to find that, with all due respect, the CEO did make a mistake on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dwight. Okay. I'd like to get some input for the acting acting code enforcement officer. Do you have any input at this time?
No, I do not. It's, there are many instances in non-conforming lots where the setbacks have been relieved to some degree, and that I have to, just want to weigh in that that was allowed simply because of the pretreatment system that Mrs. Pearson is going to put in, so that the water, that any potential effluent that may get to the water course is clean. So that's pretty much all I had at this point.
Can I just call and make that appointment?
Okay. All right, thank you.
Outside somewhere.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Okay.
All right, Mrs. Pearson, I have a question for you. Are you willing to move the location of your house structure and your septic system? I mean, do you have a plan B on your lot?
Mr. Chairman, this was not an easy process to determine where things could go. Where they were put and designed is the only place they can go. The camp location really can't be moved. All the setbacks are met. And I agree that the town, with the lawyer, Gordon Smith, that the town does regulate in Shoreline Zone. But what I was referring to, if you listen to the slides, and what I was saying, it's the septic system that's being regulated by the state. And they approved this.
Okay, we're not going there. We heard what you had to say, and I
Can't be
understand.
moved. The septic system can't be moved.
You can't reverse, you can't locate a septic system somewhere else
No.
with a different system, an Elgin system? There's got to
No,
be some type of way to
is
move
the
your
best-
structures around.
You can't. It's the best system designed for the lot. It's expertly designed for the soils and the topography of the lot. The lot is a non-conforming lot, therefore it doesn't meet today's standards for a lot. It's small. You know, all of this stuff just fit in there. We fit it in. We made it work. It's not going to compromise any water quality. You know, and everybody's talking about, you know, floods. You know, I've lived here. We had the same floods, and the tar road, I'm sure, greatly contributed to the easy flow of that water going down that hill. And the Del Sestos camp are right at the bottom. That's where they put it. That's where they built it. What happened to everybody else's septic systems? Did they lift up and go into the lake? That's a question.
Mrs. Pearson, we're talking about your lot right now, and I understand there's, you know, you might have some feelings about your abutters and stuff like that, but we're just going to focus on what's at hand. Okay. But it seems to me like you would be able to move some items around and relocate your septic system. I don't understand why you can't do that. And I would think that the town would probably, you know, you're better off getting, it'd be easier to get a variance for that more than this would be for your leach field, where you have proposed, where it's going to be proposed now.
Mr. Chairman, that's where the soils test was taken, and that's where it was approved. It can't be moved. We evaluated the whole site. It's the highest point, it's the safest point, it's the best place. There are plenty of other systems within Shoreline Zone.
Okay. Does anybody have any more questions for anybody? Arnie, are you a butter? You're muted.
I'm trying
Okay.
to unmute him.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Are you in a butter?
No, I am not.
Okay, we're going to, if you're not in a butter, I'm not gonna have you make a speech, okay?
Hold on a minute. Point of order, Mr. Chairman. This has been advertised as a public hearing. According to the manual,
Arnie, you're more than welcome to listen, but we don't have to table if you're not in a butter, then it's not gonna affect.
I'm asking for.
Brandy, do you have a question? No,
I
sir.
I was just trying to figure out who the abutters are.
Arnie, I'm sorry. Arnie, I'm sorry, but we're not gonna hear your case. Brandy, go ahead.
Who are all the abutters? Do we have a list of who everyone is?
No, I don't think I think there's maybe two abutters and that's it.
That's all it sounded like.
Okay, so
There's a list in our packet, Brandy. I think it's almost at the end somewhere.
okay.
They have it all.
All right.
It's all listed out. I remember
I'd
reading it.
like to make a motion for this case to be closed for deliberation with the zoning board of appeals people.
I'll second that.
All right. Okay, Jen.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'd like to go ahead and we're gonna close this case for deliberation.
Okay.
So with the Zoom, you mute people and just leave the ZBA members unmuted.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay. And is Joe still around? Lankowski?
Yes, he is.
Okay, we'd like to have him present as well.
I'm here.
Oh, sorry about that, Joe. Try that. Oops.
I'm here, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
I believe, Mr. Chairman, everybody else is muted.
okay. All right, let's start. Roland, questions, comments, concerns, moans, groans.
Moans and groans. Oh, well, now. I personally would consider the septic system to be a structure. Therefore, I would say that it must meet the zoning requirement as far as setbacks.
Okay.
I do not believe that the state has the power to overrule the town as far as granting a variance. I think it should have been gone through the town to be appropriate. As far as the setback from the tributary stream, anybody that has spent any time in the woods knows that you can come across what appears to be a stream and it's dry, and you can come back, you know, at a different time and you'll find water flowing through there at a fairly good rate. I have seen some of the pictures that were taken of Langashore when it was flooded out. I have also seen a stream that crosses Acton Ridge Road, or actually it goes under Acton Ridge Road. But I've seen almost a foot of water going across the top of that road.
Okay.
So, I mean, streams do change.
Yep, I agree. Dennis.
I myself, I don't see any problem with this septic system and the way it's designed and all that. I myself don't quite see any issues with it. I don't think a septic system, technically, I disagree with Roland on the structure thing. I don't see where it says in our zoning ordinance anywhere where that is a structure.
It is. If you look at your zoning ordinance book, go to definitions, okay? And it says right here, structure. And I'm gonna read it to you. Anything built for the support, shelter, or enclosure of persons, animals, goods, or property of any kind, together with anything constructed or erected with a fixed location on or in the ground, exclusive of fences, poles, etc., this term includes structures temporarily or permanently located, such as decks, patios, satellite dishes. It states right there, in the ground. That's a structure. Anything built for support, well, a septic system is support for a structure. You can't have one without the other unless you want an outhouse,
And that's not legal.
and that's not legal. So
Well, I kind of disagree with you, Dan.
okay,
Dude,
that's
my
fine.
my only justification is what the code officer said. That's where I'm justifying it, is off what our code officer said.
Okay.
That's all.
All right, but, and then the problem is that where her leach field is, the 29 feet, that's not enough. And what Roland stated is absolutely true. You're gonna get a flood and there's gonna be erosion problems. I think we're opening ourselves up for a problem with that. And I just don't understand why they can't move, you know, there's a large enough area, and you have this map as well. I understand why it has to be there.
I would agree that, you know.
But if you look,
They
sorry,
have
Ron.
definitely put in a very good septic system. Okay. I have no qualms about that whatsoever. However, you know, I mean, you still have to meet the setbacks.
I agree. Brandy, your thoughts?
My thoughts are, can we look up what Ken's, no, I shouldn't use Ken's, who was putting out permits before, if they deem that as a structure or not? Like his terminology, is that a structure to him for other permits?
I don't think there's a
For
way.
putting
we
in a
can-
septic? Okay,
I don't think there's a way we can look that up. you
okay.
know, easily.
Like his version of what it should be or what it is.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's in a shoreline zone. It is what it is. It's at a lousy place.
Right. Have we done a site view of that?
Even
Site?
if, no, we're not, well, we never did a site walk. We weren't
Okay.
allowed to apparently, so. But the pictures they showed, you know, I mean, I don't think you really need to. Joe, your thoughts on this?
Well, I want to be a little careful here and not tread on the appellant's position. Again, I'm slightly in an awkward position here. I'm really not here to advise the board. I'm actually here on behalf of the code enforcement office.
Well, yeah.
But again, my position is that without attempting to take a legal position on it, clearly the code enforcement officer, the prior code enforcement officer, felt that the septic system, underground septic systems were not structures, because we can tell that again from the way he wrote his permit. So that's really kind of what I'm hanging my hat on, as well as the reservations I expressed before about what happens down the road if we take the position that they're structures. I'm here defending what I perceive as the code office's determination that it was not a structure.
What could it possibly be, Joe? If it's not a structure, how can you possibly not classify that as a structure?
Well, Ron, I understand what you're saying. I disagree with, this happens a lot of times with interpretations of ordinances and interpretations of statutes. Dan read that definition one way, I read it another, and it's a subtle difference. It's the difference between in and under, I think. I think it's talking about in the ground, and that's why it says, but we're not talking about fences, even though you put fences in the ground. I think in the ground and under the ground are different. And I think,
God, I love lawyers.
No, you don't.
I think you guys get paid for each word you say.
I wish.
So basically, we have two questions to answer, correct, Dan?
Well, yeah, because the question is the shoreline zone area, okay? The setbacks for that. And then also, the variance never went through the ZBA to begin with. It went right to the state. We had no idea about any of this. That to me is kind of weird. And then the fact of the structure. I mean, it seems like they went beyond with the septic system. It's a fantastic septic system, like Dennis said. I mean, they've gone beyond the normal to make this work. So I'm kind of tossed. But it's still the shoreline zone. I mean, you can't get away from that. I don't think we don't have the ability to do that, to say, yeah, you can, the distance is okay. I mean, I don't think we have the authority to do that. But you're opening up a can of worms and everybody's going to want to do it. It's 250 feet or nothing. Right?
I would agree. And I don't, I do not see that the state can overrule the town.
Okay.
The state can say A, B, and C, and the town can take it further and go A, B, C, yes, D, E, F. We have the ability and the right to make things more stringent than the state requires.
No, that's true.
But the town gives variances all the time. Right? They give
bring it to the
best
town.
Practical location and stuff like that. They do that.
Yes,
so we do have people
Yes.
do have the authority.
And bring it to the town.
It is actually,
I'm sorry to interrupt. Lois Michaud is in the meeting. She's listed under Galaxy
Yeah.
tab E. Lois, they can now hear you.
I've been able to hear them right along.
Okay, I'm sorry, Dan, and I apologize for stepping in, but as one of your members. So I've been asking you to turn your camera on, and I'm also sending you a private chat, Lois. Can you turn your camera on so Dan can see you?
My camera was on. Hang on.
I'm sorry, Mr. Archambault.
There she is.
Hey, I was here.
And she has her hand up.
We're not going to worry about that.
No, I'm trying to get rid of it now.
Go into reactions. All right. Let's just give Dan a minute. Thank you for calling in, Lois.
Oh, no problem. I heard the whole meeting. I was like, hey, wait a minute. I can't get there.
Okay, perfect. Dan can hear you, so. I'm sorry, Dan.
I'm trying to get rid of the hand and I can't.
So go into reactions at the bottom.
Huh?
I am trying, believe it or not.
And just leave it up. It's all good.
There
All
it is.
right. I don't know if anybody can see me, but
We can see you.
can
All
you?
right. So,
Sorry.
all right, so let's make a decision. I mean, we need to make a decision on this. And I guess we could actually pass this up to the state. All right, do you guys want to make a vote? Are you ready to vote?
Well, I'd like to bring something back up to you, Dan. You had a motion that was made and it was seconded, and we never voted on that. So unfortunately, that.
Oh, for
motion-
deliberating?
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
All right, that's minor. All right.
'Cause I can't see any of you guys. You're on your own.
It's all right. We're just beautiful people.
Yeah, geez, this is a tough one.
Give me a second, Dan, and I'll give you a motion.
Dan, is there room on her property for her even to put a septic tank? How far back is she? Is her lot even big enough to go 250? Because if she's 20, would you say she's at for her septic down?
It doesn't say.
She's,
It's 29 feet from the stream. That's what they're talking about, Brandy. It's not off the lake. It's the stream that goes up through the middle of a property.
Oh, I thought we were talking about shoreline
No, it's
protection.
190 feet off the lake. But you're allowed to do stuff within the shoreline zone, which is 250. But what they're talking about is the 29 feet from the corner of her concrete chambers to the stream. That's what they're talking
Which
about.
her septic is sitting up on the knoll, right? She's not
Yeah.
down.
no,
It
it's
has
on
a
top,
pump. It has
it's
a
on top
pump
of
that
the
runs
knoll.
from the tank up.
It's on the knoll, and then they're gonna add gravel. So it's gonna be even higher. I mean, 25 feet is a pretty good distance, even if a major storm came through. Would you say, Dennis?
Yeah, oh yeah. No, I think it's only a 2-chamber system. Now, typically, chamber systems are a lot bigger than that.
Three.
It's only got 2 chambers because of that tank that they're using, that green tank.
Right.
Most
So-
most chamber systems are substantially larger than 2 chambers. It's only
Yeah,
an 8x8 square area.
that's all it
I
is.
thought it was a
8 by 8 square
3-chamber.
area.
Well, it's actually 4x16 if you look at the plan, but
It's just 2 tanks.
it's just 2 chambers. It goes from the tank, that 3-chamber tank, then it pumps across up the hill. I don't see the distance. It's a little ways with an 1.5-inch pipe. It's a pump tank is what it is, and the leach bed is technically uphill from where the septic tank is.
Okay. All right.
And
So so her system basically, it goes from the house, it goes into a tank. And
Into
then
that
there it
3-chamber
stays. It's a 3-chamber tank. So by the
Yep.
time it goes down to the leach field, it's clean.
But yeah. That's what
Right.
they're saying, and that's probably why it only has the 2 chambers, Dan, because it's such a clean system when it gets up that it's not going to clog up. See, typically you have a lot more chambers. I mean, most houses have 16 feet, probably 16 chambers or something like that, like most houses, you know. This one's
Right.
only got 2 because the water's so clean when it gets up. Now, this is an assumption on my part, but it's not going to clog up the stone because there's nothing in there to clog the stone up, which allows it to have such a small actual leach bed. The leach bed is only 4x16 feet or something.
Okay. All right. I feel better about that. That makes a big difference. So, okay. So I'm good. I'm happy. Everybody else happy on the same page?
Sure.
I love the enthusiasm.
Well, one thing, I didn't get my package today because of the weather, and 2,
Okay.
I've listened to everybody talk from the point when I got in, and it's a lot on the plate.
So it's legal. Okay. All right. I mean, if you look at the permit for the septic system, it did go through the state. It can go through the state and bypass us. That's all legal and fine. So to me,
Yeah.
I mean, it's been approved by DEP, who has basically the final saying on all the rulings, as far as I'm concerned. And DHS, okay? So I feel confident that if we vote yes, the appeal is, what's the word?
Denied?
Denied, and I think we're fine. I think they'll be fine to build. I'm confident. Everybody else?
Yep.
Me too.
Okay.
I make a motion that we deny the application, the appeal.
I second. Oh, no, we have to go back live, right?
Yep.
Okay, Roland,
Yeah.
you're thinking something.
What, can you smell the wood burning?
Yeah.
All right. This is my first time, so bear with me, all right?
No problem.
Okay. All right, Jen,
Yes, sir.
we're ready to go live.
Okay, you've been live. Nothing's, unless you, you don't
We
want me
are.
to turn everybody's cameras and mutes on, right?
Yeah. All right, so we need to make a motion to vote on the matter.
You're gonna have
Make a
to do.
motion, we deny the application.
What's that,
Motion
Dennis?
to-
I said I make a motion to deny the application,
Deny the appeal.
the appeal.
Okay.
That motion was made and it was already seconded. Dan, just as a point of order, you're gonna have to ask each individual who's on the appeal board what their vote is, yay or nay.
Right. Okay, we'll start with you, Roland. Your vote, yay or nay?
Deny the appeal.
Okay. Brandy?
I just want clarification. Denying the appeal allows them to move forward with all of their plans.
Yes.
Okay, what am I doing?
You can
I deny the appeal. Yeah,
Okay, all right.
sorry.
All right, Brandy. Dennis?
I deny it.
Okay. And there's 4, I think,
Lois.
Yeah, I'm
Lois?
here.
Go ahead, Lois.
I denied an appeal.
Okay. I will abstain. So that's 4 denied, 1 abstain. So zoning board of appeals made a final decision that Mrs. Pearson, you go ahead and continue on, and that the appeal has been denied.
Did she leave us?
I think so.
Well, I know
She's there.
I could speak. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second that.
we're gonna be back at 3 o'clock.
Yep, be back in about 20 minutes.